And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. This is episode number 18, almost at the big 20. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey. We've changed a lot. We've morphed a lot from week to week. But hopefully always bringing you something entertaining, something to think about in the art spaces in general. What we do is we, every other week, have our little almost like lecture style content. That's not the right way to put it, but more like discussions about our particular fields. And then the other weeks we do an Arguing with Reddit segment, which seems to be pretty popular amongst you guys. So always let us know what we can do to improve, what we can do to change that you guys would like to see, if you guys have topic recommendations or whatever. But most importantly, we are a live show. So if you want to chat right now, we will interact with you. You'll be part of the final podcast. It's a good time. It's a fun time. And we'd love to see you around. So, yeah, with that, how was your week, Ben?
Good. It's been kind of busy with, I'm preparing to play some music with a bunch of, professional string quartet for my great aunt's memorial this weekend, and also getting prepared to move out to LA next month.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and for me, it's been a pretty slow week, so I don't think I have terribly much to report. Yeah, I'm a boring one this week. Been filming some like promotional content for myself, but nothing terribly exciting, to be honest. Yeah. Actually, we didn't introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving. I'm a media entrepreneur and a filmmaker. I own a company called Ariella. Does a whole bunch of media film stuff in general. And who are you, Ben?
I'm Ben Costello. I'm a media composer and also a flute player, kind of focusing on media, flute music, I'd say.
Cool. And usually we have a third person here, a third crew member, Nathan. He's currently out. We'll see if he jumps in on the stream later. And he's a game developer. So we like to come at, the art space from our very different perspectives, come in and collide and talk about very interesting topics. So yeah, I think I'll start this week just because it'll be like a more general overview. I suspect I usually go on long. This time I think I'm going to go on a little short because it's not the most in-depth topic. But yeah, as everyone knows, Black Widow. Black Widow is a Marvel film. I don't think I need to give it much of an introduction. You've probably seen an ad somewhere, whether it's YouTube or on a billboard or I don't know, wherever you go. Marvel definitely put money into to marketing this film. And the backdrop behind it, which I also think most people know, is that this film was much asked for in terms of the Marvel fans. They've been asking for a Black Widow film since Black Widow was a character in the MCU. And they are just now getting the Black Widow movie after, big spoiler alert right now. Don't, click away right now if you don't want to know a detail that you probably should know by now if you exist. But Black Widow is dead in the MCU. And so this film is sort of like a post-mortem, sort of thing. It's kind of bizarre, actually, in terms of the way that whole thing played out. And there are a lot of feelings in the community about that, and a lot of people are upset with Marvel for waiting until after she died to make her movie. Now, I'm going to come at it. I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also sort of a business person. I love talking about the business of filmmaking in general because I think it's fascinating, especially when you talk about these big mega giants, these big multi-billion dollar, almost trillion dollar, companies, who are slugging it out. Not really, I guess. That's not even the right term because they don't really do much. They put out some interesting stuff, and their motivations for doing so are always interesting, to say the very least. So, yeah. So I'm gonna let's see. I think I posted this in our Discord how much Black Widow made opening week, but do you remember what it was, Ben?
Uh, I wanted to say like 60 million or 80 million.
It was 80 million, and then it's since then accrued 200 million, and then it accrued like 60 million on 60 million on Disney Plus, that early access feature that Disney Plus has. I don't have Disney Plus, but I think you do, right? So how does that
Yeah.
work? Like, I actually don't know.
So you, if you want to watch it, you have to click on like Premiere Access, and you have to pay separately for it.
Okay,
Or you
interesting.
just or you just wait until it comes out without Premiere Access and watch it for free, other than what you're already paying for Disney Plus.
Right. So how much is is it like a movie ticket, or I assume it's a lot less
You
than
know
that.
what? I don't. I'll pull it up right now. See how much it asked me to pay.
It's a very interesting system. I will say that. They're kind of trying to have the best of both
Let's
worlds with having.
Black Widow,
Let's see.
$29.99.
What? Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding. Premiere Access, $29.99 on top of your Disney Plus subscription.
So they're gonna charge more than a movie theater for streaming access? Okay, well, I actually was not expecting that. I was expecting you to say something like $10 or something like that. But
Nope.
interesting. That kind of colors things in an interesting way. Um, interesting. Well, I guess that really does change a lot of things, because I was thinking about it in terms of like, okay, what's the relative value of both? So it's kind of bizarre that the value to some people of seeing it early in their home is higher than seeing it in a theater, which there might be some COVID pressure on top of that, but how much is that? I'm not certain. It's very hard to tell. Um, Interesting. But anyway, all said and done, that is $240 million if I did the math correct. Um, you know, I haven't looked at the most recent numbers, but I highly doubt that the trend has
It says
changed very much.
340.
Oh yeah, 340 million. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
$340 million. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but you have to remember that Marvel movies are very, very expensive, and for a lot of different reasons. The first reason this should be fairly obvious, even if you don't know anything about movies. What happens when you have a cast that's locked into a universe? They have unlimited leverage against the franchise. They can ask for ever exorbitant paychecks, and normally with movies, the actor salaries aren't nearly the ratio that they are for MCU movies, and it's because these characters are locked in with that particular actor. It's basically impossible to replace them. You'd have to write them out of the universe. It's a headache and a bigger expense to fix that than it is to just pay the actor more. So, I actually hadn't looked up Scarlett Johansson's paycheck for this movie, but I'm sure it was quite large. Uh, so yeah, so there's that, but there's also a lot of bloat in Marvel movies, like ridiculous amounts of bloat. Like these crews are gigantic, just beyond what I think is necessary even to produce something of the scale that Marvel movies create. But that is their prerogative. If they want to spend that much money on the MCU, so be it. I'm not going to complain about Disney shelling out more money than they need to. Um,
Of
so
course
the
you're not.
Yeah. um, so yeah. So how much money did they spend on the budget of Black Widow? It's about $200 million. It's a lot of money. You know, I would say these days you can make a blockbuster movie, generic blockbuster movie, something that's more like, um, I don't know what a good example is, but like an original blockbuster movie. Like if Jaws were to come out this summer, um, you know, it would probably cost you something like $100 million. That's more of the ballpark what I would expect of like a big budget, maybe 100, 130, something like that is a pretty reasonable price tag of a generic blockbuster movie. So the MCU is quite expensive. Um, so that puts it in context. Now, so you might be thinking, oh, well, they made their money back already, and they have streaming ahead of them, and they have a whole bunch of other things. Not so fast, because that budget, $200 million, for a lot of people who don't know this, does not account for marketing. And marketing is extremely expensive. And marketing is a lot more items than people suspect. It's not just the billboards, it's not just the online ads, because the online ads are probably actually the cheapest part and the easiest part to do. It's also paying Scarlett Johansson to go on XYZ media runs and media tours. It's also paying for your entire marketing team that has to manage the whole thing. And I'm sure some of them are fancy and, I don't know, bureaucracy, blah, 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 blah. So we actually don't know, or at least I don't think, you don't typically know how much the marketing budget of a movie is. They don't typically announce that. But the rule of thumb is you double it. You double the movie's budget to get the marketing number, which is actually pretty crazy to think about. You can make a whole Marvel movie for $200 million. Then you have to spend another $200 million on top of it just to get people to watch it, which is pretty insane. So assuming that they doubled it, that means they spent $400 million. $400 million making Black Widow. Incredible. Why do people spend so much on making movies? It's because the multiplicative effect of movies when you have a successful movie can be quite enormous, like insane. So normally when you have to put that much money up front, it's usually a negative when you're thinking about investing your money. You know, you have to shill out all that money up front, even if it makes 10% return, or let's say even a 30% return, which is better than pretty much any safe asset class that you can invest in. Typically, you don't want to put that much money in. That's actually a negative, to your investment, is that all that money, you can't invest it anywhere else. There's a opportunity cost, and there's a risk that you're taking on so much money. So the reason why people do that for movies, at least, we'll see what the future of movies is, but the reason why, Nathan's in the house. Well, I'll pull you in soon, Nathan, after I make this point.
Okay.
There he is. The reason why people do that for movies is because you can get like a 2, 3, 4 times return, and once you've made the movie, now you have, like, especially in Disney's case, you have merchandising opportunities, you have franchising opportunities, you have endless opportunities, which is definitely true with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let me pull Nathan in. Any thoughts, Ben, on the business aspect?
When the 200 million budget, is that like the budget pre-COVID, like, or did that increase since the movie was delayed and it spent so long in post-production?
That's a good question. I doubt I doubt COVID did that much to the movie price, because that's about how much Marvel movies actually do cost on average. Even the smaller ones, which is kind of nuts. So I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it, but it's a reasonable number for Marvel. Put it that way.
I know from what I was reading from interviews of the composer Lauren Balfe that they spent a whole extra year in like the post-production, mixing and that stuff, and remixing and all doing that. So it's probably a little over mixed and mastered, honestly. So I don't know if that would have made like the budget, run over that a little bit or not.
That's interesting. It's interesting that giving more time affected the creative in like a potentially negative way. It's very interesting. I'm not sure. So did they record during COVID or post, or like during like the peak of things, or?
Yeah, so apparently it's like the last thing that was recorded in Abbey Road before the pandemic. Like, they're, according to the interview, like midway through, it's like probably, I think, like probably a 5-day session for recording it. Like by day 3, they had the you can't shake hands. You have to do like the fist bump or the elbow bump. And then like by the, day 4, they like made everyone, use hand sanitizer when they walked in. And then like, I think it probably like literally finished on the Friday when everything shut down.
Wow. Hold on. I like put Nathan in and then I ruined it. Oh no, everything is ruined. Oh no. Okay, this is going to require some surgery. I literally like clicked the wrong button by accident. And of course, in live editors, there's no undo button. So, yeah, Nathan, how was your week while I'm like finessing this?
It was all right, I guess. I started dedicating some of my time to reading up on game news and stuff like that. Like proper, like I have a schedule now essentially that I just use to stay on task and stuff like that. So I have some amount of hours allotted to reading gaming news every week. So yeah, hopefully I'll be more well educated for the podcast.
Cool. Investing time. Yeah. This is awkward. Oh man. Have you have your friends been talking about Black Widow at all, Nathan?
No, not. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I've heard it mentioned once, actually, outside of us three.
Yeah. Do you have like fans who are friends who are Marvel fans in general?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
Not
see,
like super like Marvel's like I read the Marvel comics, but like I'll watch a Marvel movie probably like most of the time it comes out.
right. This is so dank. Watching the process. If you like mixed media, hit the like button. Like if you like this kind of content here, where I'm finagling with the live overlay, hit the like button. All right, there we go. There we go. I think we're all fixed up, right? There's nothing else I need to fix. Looks good to you guys?
Looks good to me. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Continuing my spiel. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, I was talking about how expensive it was. I was talking about... Oh, yeah. Okay, so... Yeah, so the point I was making is that it was extremely expensive. It's $400 million, actually. It's not $200 million, people are saying. But let me put up an image of what it looks like when you search Black Widow box office. It's actually quite baffling. Here's a screenshot of I think it's DuckDuckGo, actually. But if you can't see that, if you can't read that very easily, I'll try to make that bigger. Here, I'll blow it up entirely, actually. That's not blowing it up. There we go. So here you can see a whole bunch of articles talking about how Black Widow succeeded extremely well. Soars to $80 million, which is, I mean, I've been looking at like box office numbers for a long time now, and just say anyone saying that is kind of bizarre to me. Like soars to $80 million. Like, okay, $87 million launch, amazing. All these articles over here, breaks pandemic box office at record. Okay, that's pretty low bar to
yeah, compared to what?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just the organic search. That's crazy to me. I have no idea what's going on there, but let me tell you something right now. For all the people who are saying that, it did so well for a pandemic film, Disney doesn't release a film to do well for a pandemic film. They will release a film to make money. That's literally why they do it. Like, they're not going to release a film just to break pandemic numbers. That's not the logic that happens in the corporate boardroom, I promise. So they've so far lost money. $400 million in, $340 million so far, roughly speaking. It's probably more than that now. Even if they break even if they make, at the end of the day, a few $100 million, that's not normal. That's not normal. They're supposed to double, triple, quadruple the money that they put in. That's why that, you don't put that, like I said at the beginning, you don't put that much money in to an investment unless you're going to get extremely high returns. That's why you make that bet to begin with. So, just that's all to say is that it's very interesting. I looked at the numbers like, there's no way. There's no way. This is the return of cinema, right? This is like Tenet, but like the Marvel version of Tenet. In terms of the way it's being marketed as come back to sit in the cinema. But it didn't get traction, and there's a few options I think that are available to explain it. There's COVID in general, which I'm not sure. The discourse around it doesn't seem to be that. There's Marvel fatigue, which is kind of where I'm seeing this going. If I look around, there's not really much excitement around this film. There's a lot of resentment behind why this film was made to begin with. So there weren't really good feelings going into this film to begin with. Marvel took a really long break from movies that people were excited about in general. I mean, they've been making movies, and yeah, there was the pandemic that put a pause on that, but even before then, it had been a while since the last Avengers movie, since they put out something that people even could be excited about instead of just being a filler Marvel movie, right? So, it took a long while to come back with something that might be exciting to their fans, which might have really just been the nail in the coffin in terms of people realizing that they actually don't care because there's no hype train anymore. There's no collective excitement over this movie, and they're like, this kind of just looks like another Marvel movie, and maybe I don't care enough to shell out the money on it this weekend, Or maybe I came across this article, I don't have a screenshot of it, but the author was saying, well, this is just continuing. This author was actually being pretty honest about the failure of the movie, which I appreciate. It was from a movie analysis news site. So, okay, that person definitely knows what I know, which is when you see that $80 million, that's pretty shocking in a bad way. The person was saying that this is just continuing the death trend of cinema in general that's been happening for the past 20 years. That explanation I completely disagree with. This is not a continuation of the trend. The trend, if you look at the graphs in cinema, is that it's stagnant. It's just flat, which is bad because you have an increasing population of people who can watch movies, but you have a flat distribution of people who are watching movies. So yes, that is a death rattle. That's not good. You want growth, not stagnation. But this is different. This is actually just a movie dying that really shouldn't on paper, and that's a completely different thing. I don't think it can be chalked up to cinema in general being dead. And this person was saying that box office numbers don't mean anything because streaming is here. The problem with it is that in that $340 million number includes $60 million from the initial streaming sales, which clearly does not account for box office success. Plus,
how do you include streaming sales? Because can you pay for just the movie?
Yeah, Ben, you want to explain again?
Yeah, so right now, if you have a Disney Plus subscription, in order to watch it, you have to pay an additional $29.99 to watch it on top of your subscription.
Wow, that's interesting. Huh.
Isn't that hefty? I thought that price was pretty hefty.
Relative to just going to buying a movie ticket and buying the popcorn as well with it, right? I mean, that's a pretty big price, plus the whatever you pay for the subscription.
Yeah, pretty wild, pretty bold.
Is the subscription, I think it's still $9.99 a month?
I have no clue myself. Yeah.
I think that's the basic level without like buying ESPN and Hulu.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I don't think it's I don't think it's the outdated model of box office success either, because I don't think streaming will even account for the loss. I think this is actually just an abject failure. $60 million initially from streaming. How many people are going to sign up to Disney Plus who haven't signed up already for just this movie? Like realistically, how many is that? And at $10, yeah, exactly. And at $10 a month, I mean, how much money are you going to make that's going to justify the cost of the entire platform? The expenses of the entire platform. This is a failure, I think, objectively speaking, from Disney's from Disney's wheelhouse, and I don't know. I don't know what it means. I just wanted to say, I just wanted to come on here and say it's interesting, and put some attention on it and see what you guys think. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm just gonna add. I was saying to Irving earlier, but I mean, my brother used to be very much proponent of Marvel, and would argue with me all the time about how Marvel's such a great. These are great films, and I should watch them. They have great lessons, and he said to me today, like, I don't really want to watch it. I just don't care. And I'm like, to me that's shocking. And other people I know who are big Marvel fans have not mentioned it at all either, and it just it seems like an apathy towards it.
Yeah, no, there's just a marked lack of enthusiasm about this franchise, I would say. Like, normally in film spaces, I'm seeing at least some references to Marvel in general, but who's excited about Captain Marvel 2? Like, seriously. After what happened with 1, there are a lot of people who are not willing to admit that they got burned with Captain Marvel 1, but deep down they're not going to pay for another ticket for Captain Marvel 2 and get absolutely bamboozled again. So, like, what's there to be excited about? Like, a lot of characters died that people loved, that what legacy is there to continue to create with Marvel? They waited such a long time to release something interesting, which I get that they were gearing up for the third and final act of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that requires a lot of planning and whatever, but I don't think they realize just how much their success relies on not the actual quality of the movies or the hype that the individual movies themselves can create, but just the overall atmosphere of the Marvel era and how continuous it was, which is interesting. I think it's very interesting. So yeah, I mean, hopefully the power vacuum is. Hopefully this does mean destruction. Let me make it clear to all those listening. I am not a Marvel fan. If you haven't gotten that already, hopefully this does culminate in their destruction. I would not cry, not shed a single tear, but hopefully the power vacuum doesn't mean that theaters die, which would be a very bad side effect. So if you are in Hollywood right now and you have something to do it now, please, and make something amazing. And if you are a theater chain owner, please don't act like a boomer anymore and do something. So,
are the theaters showing this movie like normally? Is it like a large viewing essentially that's available?
Say again.
There are a lot of theaters that are like how many like slots are they leaving for Black Widow? Is it like a lot or like average movie kind of thing, or like are they like reducing it because it didn't go so well?
I think
predict it wouldn't go so well.
I haven't actually paid attention. I haven't looked at the slots in a theater and how many it takes up, but I assume it takes up just as much as it normally would, which is probably like at this point maybe half the freaking theaters in the cinema, or maybe like a third to a half or something like that, which gets adjusted over time. So it might be less than that now. It might be a few theaters airing it, but I don't know. I think that's the movie's fault. I don't think that's anything else's fault, or maybe not even the particular movie, because I don't think the movie's gotten bad flack itself. I just think people don't care, like Ben said. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. All right, shall we? Oh yeah, we got to reintroduce the show. So, for all of you who are listening right now, we started splitting up our podcast. We've been doing this for a while now, actually, into 3 different parts. So right now you're listening to us batch record them all. But you're going to see the behind the scenes of us restarting the podcast. So I guess we'll start. So welcome back to Mixed Media. Last time you heard me talk about the failure of Black Widow in the business space, the intricacies of a Marvel movie's economics and whatnot. And this time we're going to be hearing about Black Widow from a little bit of a different perspective. and Ben's going to take it away with that. So go ahead.
All right. So if you watched the previous segment from Irving, we heard about apathy towards the film itself and not doing so well financially. But I'm gonna kind of shift gears here and say that honestly, it's probably the best Marvel score. So if we're kind of going in the wrong direction with the Marvel films in terms of money, at least we're going upwards in terms of musical quality. So this is I haven't seen the film. I've only listened to the music. So obviously, take anything I say with a grain of salt. And I don't necessarily know exactly how it fits in with the screen, but just going off the music itself. So the music is composed by Lauren Balfe, who is a younger Scottish composer. I think he's only 45. Maybe I think he's 45. So younger guy. He is a former Zimmer collaborator and assistant at Remote Control Productions, like a lot of the biggest younger composers these days.
So you're saying he's one of the monkeys that went up through the ladder?
Yeah, although he's kind of a second generation though. So if like John Powell and Harry Gregson Williams are like the first generation of assistants to Zimmer, he's a second generation. He I think started in 2004. But unlike them too, he continues to collaborate with Zimmer a little bit more than they do, and he also does a lot more work with video games. And I don't think either Powell or Gregson Williams have done any video game music as far as I know. But he actually has done quite a bit. He's done Call of Duty, Modern Warfare.
Oh, interesting.
All of the a couple of the Assassin's Creeds. Did FIFA 19 with Zimmer. All the Skylander video games. So he's done a lot of video game stuff.
Just to interject, I've listened to since I have Modern Warfare. It's actually the only COD game I own, so good coincidence. Since I have Modern Warfare, I've listened to his stuff over and over and over again because it's a game and you're dumping a lot of hours into it. And I will say it has a very Hans Zimmer sound to it, a lot of bois.
Yeah, so he's an interesting composer. He hasn't done a ton on his own. I think he did like Terminator Genesis, Mission Impossible, Fallout, but not that much more. Mostly him is kind of that action. I don't think he's done anything really big that's not an action film. I think he's moved away a little bit from Zimmer, like being a Zimmer clone, and has his own identity, but that identity is sort of being a chameleon. So that's I'll get into that with the score. He's also, my impression of him, at least interacting with him online, not directly, but within the film composer community. He's a very nice guy. He, at the beginning of the pandemic, made a lot of his music for his Dark Materials, which he's scoring the TV series. He made a lot of that material available, like scores, parts, MIDI itself. So very nice, and seems like a really nice guy in the way he interacts with the composer community. So. So his score for Black Widow, like I said, probably from I don't know all of the Marvel scores, but from what I know, it is quite a bit better than all of them. Some of that probably comes from the fact that I think it's a little bit of a different genre than most of the Marvel films. It's kind of more of a like spy thriller a bit. At least that's how what the music suggests and what I've kind of heard about it and read from the synopsis of it. So personally, I would say it's as a score, it's kind of on the edge of like good and great. Could go either way. It's definitely better than like all these serviceable but really annoying Marvel scores. It's not quite on like Solo, or How to Train Your Dragon amongst kind of recent films.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of on that edge there. What it does differently than the other Marvel scores is that it has its own unique identity, and the identity itself is not very like. If you look at track to track, like I said, he's kind of a chameleon. It's kind of all over the place, but as a whole, it has its own identity. It's not just copying the Marvel template that gonna have pretty much nothing interesting, weird ambient synths all over the place, very little music, and then we're just gonna get 8 trombones playing the Avengers theme. Hooray! We've saved the universe. So it definitely has its as a whole, it has its own identity, and it actually has some what I assume. Well, I don't know how impactful they are in the film, but musically impactful, personal, introspective moments, which when Marvel scores try to do that, they fail. I've yet to find an emotionally convincing moment in a Marvel score. This has some fairly good moments like that.
They're not very memorable, I will say that. I never remember the music from a Marvel movie.
So this one, what you're gonna take from it is you're gonna take Natasha's Lullaby, which I assume plays at the beginning of the film. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. It comes back at emotionally appropriate times, and then kind of is the end of the film as well. And that's it's not a Russian melody, which, as I said, I'll get to that in a second, but it is a melody that you can carry with you, and it works throughout the whole film. So it has that as its kind of core identity. So like I said, he's kind of a chameleon, and what I mean by that is there's a whole lot of things that this really is pulling from in a good way, and maybe in a little bit to its detriment. We've got a lot of stuff that sounds like Goldsmith's late Bond score, so like the 90s Brosnan era of Bond, just being a little bit faster. I know I made that point when I talked about I think Goldfinger, how Bond's action tends to have kind of a slow pace.
Yeah.
It's a little bit faster paced than Goldsmith, but it's very much in his kind of later Bond world, giving it that kind of spy thriller vibe. There are some really interesting things in it, and I could go into some like really technical detail, but there are some moments that we get, like the ambient synth moments tend to be really dark and foreboding, which is not something you get with a lot of ambient synths these days. It sounds very much like the kind of ambient synths that John Williams uses in Revenge of the Sith. When like Padme is, looks out and sees the Jedi temple on fire and is worrying about Anakin while Anakin's off slaughtering the children.
I never knew John Williams had synths in his work at all.
Oh, absolutely. But what he does with his synths is he writes like the notes, and then I think his name's Randy Kerber is his synth guy, and he writes like, Randy, I want you to come up with something that sounds kind of bubbly, and Randy's job is to make that sound.
Everyone needs a Randy.
Yeah,
See, I
Randy's
didn't actually
also
know there was such thing
responsible.
either, which is strange.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Nathan?
Oh yeah, I just said I never noticed there was synths in his stuff either.
Oh yeah. Well, for instance, probably the most iconic but mistaken identity of a synth in his music is the Celesta at the beginning of Hedwig's theme in Harry Potter, which is not actually a Celesta. That's Randy Kerber, who it's a video where he shows exactly how he created that. It's basically taking the Celesta sound and he adds like a different kinds of saw waves, I think, to it, and plays with all these like literally the hardware of the synth to produce it, like make it a little more velvety and a little more ringing. It's not actually a real Celeste, and Randy Kerber plays that as well. So he came out with the sound, and played it in the film.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there are a lot of moments like that, and there also are some really interesting string passages that sound very much like also from Revenge of the Sith, Anakin fighting Obi-Wan at the end. I mean, in a very like micro level, very interesting. I doubt that was intentional, but certainly something that I noticed. Yeah, and then there's like the general Zimmer ostinatos, but his ostinatos are a lot more interesting than Zimmer's. Like the ostinatos and kind of looped percussion, because he tends to, well, they build, and not just like in volume. They build orchestrationally and harmonically, so that's cool. He doesn't. I don't think he does it quite as well as Powell, but it's a little bit different because this score apparently sets the record for the most musicians one time in Abbey Road Studio, which is, people who don't know, probably the most famous recording studio for like all kinds of music, anywhere in the world. From like the Beatles, obviously the album Abbey Road is recorded at Abbey Road, to a lot of the biggest film scores. So apparently its score uses probably more musicians than that, because there are woodwinds who also play occasionally, but the largest group ever in Abbey Road, 118 instrumentalists, mostly a ton of strings, and then a ton of brass, and then 60 singers. So a lot of people to squeeze into a room right before COVID.
Yeah.
And so it gets this really thick massed effect that is kind of unusual when you get like double the amount of strings, or maybe even triple the amount of strings that people normally use in an orchestra. It's a kind of effect that you can get with your computer by just layering a million things together, but it's really hard to do that in real life. And the final element that goes into it is, I don't want to say is imitating John Powell, but there are some moments that are very much kind of out of Powell's playbook, and some of that's just the general coming out of Zimmer background. But the theme that goes along with the main antagonist, I assume, it's the theme doesn't seem to be around the antagonist. I think his name is, I don't know, either Colonel or General Drakov. It's not there when he's like by himself, but like when he's like going against Natasha, Black Widow. The theme is literally da 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 da, which, if you are familiar with
I recognize it already.
That is kind of the theme of that. I don't know exactly what you call it in Solo, a Star Wars story, but it's something like, I don't know, Fate driving Kira and Han apart, something like that. Yeah, so I can't not like listen to it and not think of Solo.
But he wouldn't be that obvious, right? It has to be a coincidence. I don't know.
I really don't know. I don't know. You can. That's a question for him if he ever does a question and answer. Well, he probably wouldn't answer that though.
Yeah,
but,
it's a pretty spicy question.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are a lot of the reasons that it's really cool score. Like, the fact that it's borrowing from all these things, and it borrows from all these things really well and puts them together really well. It doesn't have like a kind of cohesive internal ID like from track to track because it's kind of borrowing from all these things. But like I said, overall it has its own distinct ID. Also, of course, he's trying to. Well, Balfe claims he's drawing from Russian musical tradition, but that's kind of my last point here. But yeah, anyway, it's an exciting score. It has its own identity you can latch onto overall, and also in Natasha's Lullaby. It has some really cool action writing. Balfe is really good at intense action writing. Really interesting effects with the strings, like the really fast chromatic runs and tritones of like 30 violins on top of each other. Really cool stuff. Very exciting. So if you like action music, I recommend listening to it. So like the main issues I have with it that I think keep it from being like a great score. I really wish there would have been some more woodwinds for intimacy. That's one of my big themes. If you listen to our show, I like talking about woodwinds and intimate moments. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a woodwind player myself. But I think the exclusion of woodwinds, except for having like, the flute and piccolo playing octaves and action runs, I wish there'd just be a lot more of it. That's part of why, John Williams and John Powell are so great, because they use woodwinds really effectively. Also, eventually, if you listen to the whole thing, I at least find that although it's a really cool effect to have a ton of brass and a ton of strings, it's a really cool effect. But like after 40 minutes of that, it sounds a little less interesting. But that texture. Yeah. My biggest issue with it, and this is probably not something that's going to bother anybody else, but I am a kind of student of Russian music. I kind of came up in the musical world by my love of Russian music, what I studied in college, something that I am still very, very involved in, and will hopefully play a big part in my future career in some way, shape, or form. I also studied Russian literature in college, so I'm going to read really quickly from something that Balfe said in one of his interviews. Let me pull it up here, about the Russianness of the music, and then we can briefly discuss whether he was successful or not. Okay, so the interviewer asks, after all this time, Natasha doesn't just have her own motif. You gave her an entire Russian-influenced musical identity. Would that be fair to say? And he says, I'd say I'm glad that you got that from the music. Yes, when director Kate Shortland and I first started talking, that was the whole point of understanding her background and telling her story, which had not been told properly before. What I said to Kate in the beginning was, look, I was interested. What's the music that those sisters would have listened to when they were children? I said, what's the folk music? Or what are the nursery rhymes? Or what's the traditional music? Lots of traditional music has made it into modern culture. With Russian music, you've got Tetris theme, for example. So I thought what I'll do is write a fictitious folk tune. So basically, we are creating something that could have been something they listened to when they were children. And that's what the first track on the album is, Natasha's Story. A piece of music that could have come from her childhood. Musically, I was just listening to a lot of Prokofiev, a lot of Stravinsky. Russian music is fascinating because you don't necessarily need the instruments to make it sound Russian. You look at classical music, and they're not using balalaikas, which is a Russian string instrument, like traditional folk string instrument. It's a westernized orchestra, but it feels Russian. Okay. So Balth is saying that he's trying to make Natasha's theme and the song associated with it, something that sounds like what could have been a real Russian lullaby sung to her as a child. And to do that, he was studying Prokofiev and Stravinsky, and he makes some good points. Russian music always sounds Russian, and that observation, when I made that observation for myself, that kind of set me down the path that I am on now. Like when I realized that all Russian music sounds Russian somehow, then I started asking myself why it sounds Russian, and that kind of led me to why does music ever sound the way it does? So that's a great observation that he makes, and it's great also that he makes the observation that Russian music generally sounds Russian without using a bunch of Russian folk instruments. Obviously, you can, but the orchestral tradition does not. So great. Those are great observations. And does he succeed in that? I would say categorically no.
Rip.
If you listen to it, my general impression of it, and I have listened to countless thousands of hours of Russian music, studying Russian music, going to professional music theory conferences in Moscow, discussing Russian music theory. It just isn't Russian. It sort of sounds like generic Oriental other, in a way that if you don't really know a lot of Russian music, you could maybe mistake it as, oh, okay, that sounds good enough for, a movie that doesn't actually portray real Russia anyway. Okay. At best, you could maybe say that it has kind of a flavor of like the kind of Oriental, like the Russian East, kind of like the Georgia, Armenia region, which a lot of Russian composers do try to imitate, because it's kind of Russian music tends to have a fascination with what they consider the Oriental part of Russia. But our protagonist here is Natasha, and
who's not from that region.
Natasha Romanov, right? She is related to the Romanov family, the blood rulers of, Rus. Okay, she's not a person from the kind of mountainous regions of far occupied Russia. So that doesn't make much sense either. It's a nice theme. Interesting lyrics. In case anybody listens to us and wonders what on earth they sing, or what on earth. Well, there are two. It is the choir that sings behind the solo singer. So the solo singer, basically, I'll just read what she says in English. It's pretty short. But as a note to this, we can be very certain that Balth doesn't actually know how to write in Russian, because he pauses on the word na, which is like it's a preposition, and you can't break up a preposition and its object. It sounds really weird if you do that across a phrase. It'd be like saying in English, I don't know, if you're singing a song in something like I bought you a book. Like,
Yeah.
people don't sing that way.
Yeah.
So
You hire somebody who speaks Russian proper to write the lyrics?
well, the lyrics make sense in Russian, but you still have to figure out how to like take the lyrics that are
Oh,
written
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
I
put
gotcha.
them into music. Like, so a real, you would not pause there.
Right.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, but
so
you
I'll just,
could get like a Russian lyricist to be like, "Hey, that doesn't sound right," or something. You know? Do you just not think that was a possibility that it could sound awkward due to how he makes the rhythm? I mean, he should know, right? Like,
um my guess is it tends to happen with anything that is Russian in, like generically stereotypically Russian in film. They just try and make it look and sound Russian enough, and that if you actually know Russian, you'd be like, well, that's stupid. Like, I don't remember what James Bond film, I think it was Golden Eye that I watched, where like, if you pause the screen and look what's like written on the newspaper, it's like it's not a newspaper article, like things like that. But it's good enough for someone who doesn't know Russian, so you're not going to question it. Um,
yeah,
yeah.
gotcha.
So anyway, I'll just quickly read the lyrics. It's pretty short, just in case anybody actually wants to know what is being sung on the track. So the lyrics are, in our declining years, we love more tenderly. Shine, light of farewell, you light of final love. The shadow of the evening afterglow is filling half of the sky, but only there in the west is that glow kind of wandering about. Linger on, evening daylight. Continue longer, O enchantment. Let the blood grow weak in my veins, but may my tender feelings for you never grow weaker in my heart. You, O enchantment, O final love.
You just translate that live?
No, I wrote it down,
Oh,
but
okay.
I wasn't gonna remember what it was without writing it down. But yeah, that's my translation of it.
Pretty beast.
Um, yeah, and that you can't. I looked online to see if anyone else could figure out exactly what like the kind of masked background choir sings while she's singing that. You can pick out some words, but I don't think anybody can really figure out all of them. So, like
Mm,
they kind of are repeating things like honor, honesty, struggle, bravery, strength,
mm.
words like that. Okay. So just in case you were interested in what is actually sung there, it's a weird lullaby.
Yeah.
I wouldn't sing that to my kids, but that's neither here nor there. Um,
That's true. It is supposed to be a lullaby.
yeah. So that's kind of the musical identity, or not musical identity, the musical core that sort of runs through the whole thing, despite all the other shifting influences and styles. It's effective, even if it's not terribly Russian. So I fail a ball uh, on writing an actual Russian theme, but nice that he attempted to. I think it probably works for like anyone who doesn't like obsessively study Russian music or isn't from Russia. So take that with a grain of salt.
Right.
Overall, yeah, best Marvel score, kind of on that edge of good and great. A lot of really
Mm,
interesting stuff.
cool. Yeah. No, I'm not, well, I mean, you see, I would support Marvel if they started making good stuff overall, Like, and then maybe I'll consider them, reconsider my opinion of them. But, I don't know. Hopefully this gives them more chance or gives people more chances in the future too to do their own thing. Did you say why he was able to do his own thing more or less, or was it just that the film's direction in general was different, or
I would guess that, and it sounds like from the interview that he did on it that I was reading, that the director was very much probably because of fan demand for this film, trying to make it a more personal film that kind of explores the character as a character, not as like a
Ragdoll.
Yeah, not as like a piece of paper on a stick that
Right.
is being shoved around and saving the world.
Right. Cool. Cool. So I guess we'll go on to Nathan. Nathan has a very different topic with
Yeah.
he's bucking the trend here. There's no Black Widow game, is there?
Not that I'm. Why would they? No, I doubt it. I was saying like I don't think so. Not that I'm aware. I'm like this probably just isn't one. Like based on the fact that the character has not been a very prominent one for a long time.
Don't say that. You're gonna get a bunch of Natasha fans mad. All right.
See. Oh well, there's Avengers games, so she's probably in one of them.
She's probably in one of them. Yeah. All right. Do you want to introduce your segment?
Sure. Or do you want to? Oh. Let's see. I was about to ask you if you want to introduce it, but then never mind. I just misunderstood. Sure.
Guys, do the welcome back and everything.
Okay. Welcome back to the podcast, Mixed Media. This is the third section where I'll be talking about not Black Widow. We talked about that in the past two sections. I'll be talking about the new console that'll be coming out relatively soon called the Steam Deck. So yeah, my topic is fairly short because there's not much that's known about it currently. But let me give you the overview first. So yesterday, the Steam Deck was announced, created by the company who owns the Steam store, Valve. It's not the first console. They also released another console. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was in partnership with Alienware. And they also have the Valve Index, which is a VR headset, which is fairly popular. But the whatever they did with Alienware, I don't think that ever went anywhere. But this console is a handheld console, unlike the Xbox or PlayStation. It's like a Switch type thing. So yeah, as announced yesterday, you can reserve an order today, starting today, I believe. What that means essentially is that you can sign up, you put in your email, whatever. You have to pay to reserve, which is interesting. And what that does is when they have the inventory, they'll email you, and then you can buy it. So yeah, I wonder if they're doing this as a sort of anti-scalper thing, because that was happening a lot with PlayStations, and that was a problem. So you make everyone pay you make them pay before, like, to reserve, so that I guess an added fee for people who are buying in bulk. I'm not really sure why I have to do it now instead of later, but whatever. So that's happening. Yeah. So yeah, let's get into what makes it interesting. So first, if you look at it, I should have sent you a picture. Oh, it's a picture on screen. Never mind.
Yeah, it's there.
If you look at the layout, it's very unique. So you have a 7-inch screen. It's touchscreen on the middle of it, big thing. All right. You have stereo microphones, stereo speakers. You have a standard right thumbstick, standard left thumbstick, and a sort of PlayStation controller format where they're towards the top of it. You have your ABXY buttons like you see on an Xbox, and instead of them being below the right stick, they're to the right of the right stick, which is interesting. And on the left side, you have a D-pad, which is to the left of the thumbstick, where on an Xbox it'd be above, and on a PlayStation controller it'd be below. The reason why they did this, they put them to the side instead of stacking them vertically, is because there is another interface for you to interact with your games. They have two trackpads, one on the left, one on the right. These look like they're sort of where on an Xbox controller the left stick would be, like that sort of height. It's like in the middle of it, pretty much. You have two trackpads, and aside from that, there are a couple extra buttons. You have a menu button, a view button. I'm not really sure what that does. A Steam button, which I believe will just bring you to the Steam store, or maybe the Steam library, and a quick access button, which I also don't know what that does yet. You also have a standard right trigger, trigger bumper setup on both sides. There are volume buttons in the front, a headphone jack, a USB Type-C port for charging. I'm not sure if there's anything else you can plug into it, but as far as I know, like I'm not sure if you can plug in a monitor to it. I'm not sure if that'd work, but at least for charging, USB Type-C. There's a fan grate in the front, which is interesting. So I don't know if the Nintendo Switch has a fan. I'm not sure. I feel like it'll get quite hot, right? But it's also a very low-powered device. It's not very beefy at all. And it has a power button, yes. And additionally, to add to its uniqueness, on the bottom of it, like sort of where you put your middle finger and ring finger, there are 2 extra buttons on the bottom. Well, 4. There's 2 on each side. To totally max out the amount of buttons that you can have on this thing. So, yeah, I think as far as the button layout goes, I think it makes a lot of sense for what they're doing. They have a lot of buttons because I'll get to it later, but like why this is, but compared to the Switch, you'll be finding people playing a lot more MOBAs and like MMORPGs where the amount of buttons you have to press are usually pretty large. So having just like a D-pad and just AVXY and bumpers is going to be a bit of a problem for that. So having all those extra buttons would prove to be useful in that scenario. And the trackpad, I think, is I have my suspicion as to why that's a thing. I'll also get to that later. But besides from that suspicion, it can also be used as a replacement for potentially like a D-pad, because I can imagine a programmer just making it so that you tap a certain part of the trackpad and it acts like any other button instead of having to like use a trackpad as you would on a laptop, where you use it as like a cursor to move your cursor around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what's inside of it? What kind of specs are we talking about here? It's a custom AMD CPU that has an integrated GPU inside of it. It uses Zen 2 architecture, 4 cores, 8 threads, running at 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz, and it uses RDNA 2 graphics, integrated graphics, with 2 compute units running at 1 to 1.6 gigahertz, which is fairly slow. Well, actually, no, that's actually. Isn't that actually pretty decent? I was about to say it's fairly slow.
Wait, what was it? What was the stat?
It's 1.0 to 1.6 gigahertz GPU clock speed. That's pretty like good, actually, right?
For a GPU, right? I don't know where we are now in terms of.
Yes, I'm thinking, because I was thinking, I was like, oh, it's pretty slow, but I'm thinking no. But I'm thinking about CPUs. CPUs are like way higher, 2 to 3 range in gigahertz. I'm not really sure where GPUs tend to lie, but I think it's pretty good. The crazy part is that this CPU runs at 4 to 15 watts, which is not a lot of power at all. For reference, some light bulbs run at 100 watts. Now, a CPU is a lot more energy efficient than you might think it is. It's a pretty small device that doesn't need that much power to run, because the fact that it's smaller means that it actually needs less power for reasons I don't know, big brain enough to understand. But yeah, that is that. That's why it consumes a little power. But even for like laptop standards or and stuff like that, that is a ridiculously low amount of power. So that's a pretty beastly CPU that AMD was able to whip up for this. As for RAM, 16 gigabytes of RAM, which I thought was like pretty crazy for such a small form factor.
Yeah,
that is not a normal thing for like a laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM. Yeah, you'll find them, but they're definitely not the norm currently. Like 8 gigabytes for a laptop is probably the norm. My laptop is decently bigger than this thing. So yeah, running at a 5.5. What is it? MT per second. What is that? It's not written in hertz. It's not written in hertz. It's 5,500 MT per second. I guess something.
Never heard of it.
What? Or isn't it always like measured in hertz?
I thought so.
Or megahertz probably.
By the way, you're like really dark.
Oh yeah, I can turn on the light. Give me a second.
Well, in the meantime, while he's doing that, just hit the like button if you like this stream. It really helps with discovery on live, which is extremely difficult. So we want to make this a party. So hit the like button if you're watching now. If you're watching in post, hello. You should come live Fridays, 7 p.m. here on Mixed Media Eastern. All right, go back. You can go ahead.
MT per second, in case you're wondering, is mega transfers per second.
I've never heard of that.
So I assume one transfer is equal to 1 hertz. That's what a hertz
Okay.
means anyways.
It's a measurement of bus and channel speed in millions of effective cycles per second.
What?
Oh,
It's a
cycles
rating
per second. So that's going to be
yeah,
hertz anyways, right?
yeah. So it's a rating of the actual delivered speed rather than the frequency of the clock.
Oh, so they're not the same. Hertz would be just the frequency of the clock speed of the RAM.
That's interesting. That's an interesting metric. It's like it accounts for some like loss of efficiency, I assume, like
Yeah.
in the clock ticks.
Right.
So
That's
I guess
why
we can
it's a
say
measure of effective transfers.
Yeah.
yeah. I guess we can say if this is 5.5 giga transfers per second, then if you want to because normally if you were to go and buy RAM, it's going to tell you it in hertz. So I guess if you want to compare, you just add it's just greater than that, greater than that in terms of gigahertz. So yeah, in terms of storage, there are 3 different Steam Deck models. So the base one is 64 gigabytes of eMMC memory, and there's the second tier is 256 gigabytes of NVMe SSD, and the last tier is 512 gigabytes of higher speed NVMe SSD. It just says high speed. I don't know how it doesn't say a read or write speed, but or transfer speed. But yeah. All the models, however, will include a micro SD card slot to add to however much storage you want to. So yeah. I'm just noticing actually. I didn't notice this the first time I read this little page of specs, but it says that the console has 4 assignable. Oh, I thought it said adjustable. Never mind. 4 assignable grip buttons. My bad. I thought it said adjustable. I was like, what does that mean? But yeah. The console has haptic feedback, and the resolution is 1280 by 800, which is a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. Not sure why I didn't go with 16 by 9, but I guess maybe it's just it probably makes sense for something you hold. It makes sense for it to be longer than it is tall. And the screen refresh rate is.
I was gonna say this thing sounds like it probably is fairly expensive.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. And it runs at 60 hertz, the refresh rate of the screen. And yeah, I think that it has Wi-Fi, it has Bluetooth. I believe that's really all there is to. Oh, it has a 40 watt hour battery, which is 2 to 8 hours of gameplay. And weighs 669 grams. I don't know what that is in pounds. I have no clue. But nah, I don't know if it's heavy or light. So those are the specs. Oh, and most importantly, perhaps, well, not most importantly, but one of the most important things is it doesn't run on any custom console OS. It runs, well, technically it does. It runs on SteamOS, which is just a version of Linux. It's a yeah. It's
Wait, so can you plug this thing into a monitor potentially and then game on that? Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Well, the Switch can do that too.
True.
And we'll get to how it, I'll get to the comparison between Switch and this, but yeah.
But can you use it?
1.47 pounds.
For what?
1.475 pounds.
Oh, that's pretty okay. That's not bad. Pretty good. For a computer, that's pretty good. Yeah. SteamOS. Yeah, it's a new version of SteamOS. SteamOS has actually been a thing they used in the old consoles talking about before that didn't go very well. But now it's on SteamOS 3.0. I'm not sure what the difference is. And if you're wondering, the desktop environment is KDE Plasma, which I don't think really matters because I don't think you can see the desktop. I think SteamOS hides it. I think it's essentially a Steam desktop.
Wait. Well, that's that would be a huge benefit if I could just
I think you can. I think you're just not it's not normal to it's not a computer, or it is a computer. It's not like a normal working machine that you would use for everyday tasks. You know what I'm saying?
I get that, but I mean, the option to I don't know, type an email on it would be pretty cool.
Well,
I don't know.
It is Linux, so you can probably literally do anything you want with it. I'm sure people are going to figure out how to literally I mean, you can download your own OS on it, probably if you want to.
I see.
And yeah, now the Nintendo Switch, there's also a dock. this is how you connect to a external monitor or a TV screen. It supports up to, I believe it's 8K or something like that. And whether it can run 8K is 8K at 60 hertz. Not that it can run that anyways, but that's a possibility. The dock on it has many ports, so it has an Ethernet port, so it's not just for it's like a USB hub. It's not just for using external displays. It has other functionalities. So it has two USB 2.0s. So you can use to plug in like a mouse and a keyboard, for example, and you can use that if you wanted to. It has a display port and an HDMI 2.0, which are both things that you can use for connecting to a TV. It has a USB Type-C, which you can just use to, if you want to charge it through because if it's connected to the dock, then you have to plug into the dock if you want to charge it instead of plugging directly into the console itself. It has an Ethernet port, as I said before, and also has an extra USB 3.1 rather, for whatever high-speed transfers you may want. So, yeah, and the dock weighs 120 grams, if that matters. I don't think it really does because you just put it somewhere, right?
Yeah, I don't think that matters.
Yeah. So let's talk about some comparisons between the Switch and the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck is directly the competitor of the Switch. This is not competing for the same audience as like the Xbox or the PlayStation or a gaming PC. They're both like portable devices that, powerful enough to not be a phone, essentially, with a bigger screen and more ergonomic. So my first impression was that the Steam Deck doesn't seem as much as a party device as the Nintendo Switch. So with the Switch, the dock is a big feature of it, right? The dock lets you connect to a TV, and from there you can play split screen with whoever. And as well, you also have the detachable Joy-Cons controllers that let you play with two people, which I think is pretty cool and pretty innovative. The Steam Dock does not have that. You cannot detach the controllers, and the dock is not available. And actually, it doesn't come with any model. The dock you have to buy separately for an unknown price. They said they'll have more information on it later. So people who are gonna reserve, they don't even know what it costs to get the dock.
No.
See, I think it just shows that they're not trying to make this the party device. It's more of a solo device.
Like a play. This is like a PSP,
That's what I was thinking,
revival,
right?
almost, basically.
It definitely has party capabilities because you can buy the dock, but at least the standard model, none of the models will come with that. This is contrary to the Switch, where they have three models. So the Switch has they used to have two. They just added the third one. They have the Nintendo Switch Lite. They have the standard Nintendo Switch, and they have the Nintendo Switch OLED model, which is just the standard Nintendo Switch with an OLED screen. And the only one that doesn't have the dock is the Nintendo Switch Lite. As well, there's also this thing called tabletop mode that you can do on all the Switches except the Lite, where it's like a stand, right? The Switch has a stand built into it, so you can just put it on a table, and then it's a lot better to play party games like that with multiple people when it's on a table rather than in one person's hands. That's kind of awkward, especially if you're trying to hold a separate controller. How are you gonna hold the screen? So, yeah. That being said, you can definitely play party games on the Steam Deck because it has Bluetooth, and that would work with the. Oddly enough, I don't think there's a Steam controller that's out there. I don't think it has Bluetooth, which is interesting.
Oh,
it seems like maybe they'll make some for Bluetooth just for this. But yeah, if you have Bluetooth controllers, then
can you connect this to their what do they call it? The Index,
the Valve Index?
Yeah. That seems to be an L if they can't. If you can't,
it's just a computer, right? It's Linux. You should be able to, right?
I don't know.
I would assume so. I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't know if it would perform well. I don't think it would, but it would be possible. Yeah. Oh no. Well, wait. It doesn't matter. The Index doesn't. The Index has built-in computing, unlike other like the Oculus Quest, where it relies on the host computer. No, the Quest has built-in. Oh, is it the Index that doesn't?
The Index is no. You definitely need to kind of it's your computer that's doing the computing.
Gotcha. It's that way around. The Index requires a host computer. So yeah, that's I don't know. I wouldn't trust the performance. So yeah, then you also have the difference in the library. So on one hand, you have the whole Steam library. On the other hand, you have the Nintendo Store or whatever it's called, right? Nintendo Store is at this point, I would guess, probably a few hundred games strong, um, and probably on average has like higher quality games than the Steam library. Now, that's not to say that there aren't like when I say that, I really just mean because there's a lot of trash just on just on the Steam store. That's all I'm saying. The Steam store definitely has many, 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 many thousands, probably tens of thousands of games, because it's not nearly as hard to get your game on the Steam store as it is on the Nintendo store, and it's also a lot easier to develop for Steam because it's just the generic PC platform and it's like big audience. Whereas not as many people are going to develop for a Switch because you need to have one to develop for it to test it and stuff like that. And you're also giving yourself a smaller audience to play with, and you have constraints like gonna have big hardware constraints because it's not as powerful as many people's computers. So yeah, probably the Steam store is. I guess it depends what kind of games you like, right? The Switch store has a different vibe than like the Steam store. Of course, you also get all the Nintendo exclusives on the Steam store. So if you're or on the Switch store, so if you're or Nintendo store, they call it. If you're a big Nintendo fan, I guess that would be a worthwhile investment. So as for the price comparison, the three models of the Nintendo Switch are all cheaper than the base model of the Steam Deck. So at the lowest MSRP for the Nintendo Switch Lite, it's $200, and it's selling at MSRP, so that's accurate, $200. Then the standard Nintendo Switch is $300, and the OLED version is $350. If I recall correctly, I think they also added a Ethernet port to the OLED model as well, so it's not exactly the same besides OLED screen. So as for the price of the Steam Deck, the 64 gigabyte version, which just comes with a carrying case, is $400. So it's already $50 more expensive than the most expensive version of the Switch.
64 gigabytes these days for a game is literally nothing. Like you can't.
Yeah, it's not a. Yeah, this is like also so. The let me check. What's the Switch?
You couldn't fit Call of Duty on there. Like you literally could not play it.
That being said, it's like a very specific. It's like not that many games that are like massive. Those games tend to be AAA games, and I have a feeling this is not a AAA game machine for that reason, and just the fact that the hardware might not be able to run it very easily.
But at that point, I feel like it's an F though, because then you limit the amount of people who would even care about this thing, like because now it's not a party thing, and it's also not a AAA machine. Then your audience is like hardcore indie players. That's very specific. I don't know.
This is true. Yeah, I just found that the base Switch model is 32 gigabytes. Yikes. Okay.
Well, that works for them because their games are probably very tiny. Because
they also use a fancy compression algorithm to get things to be nice and small on their storage. And if you're wondering how the spec comparison goes between the Switch only has 4 gigabytes of RAM at 1.6 gigahertz. It uses an NVIDIA CPU, which makes you think it's absolute doo-doo. So yeah, uses an NVIDIA GPU as well, which is probably all right. I think it has like I think the GPU has like or the CPU rather has like some insane amount of cores. It's like a lot. I don't know why. It seems the opposite. I think it's 8. Yeah, 8 cores. At 1.02 gigahertz. So very slow, but a lot of them. Yeah, so storage, pretty small, I guess. I think this is just not. Someone raised this concern before, and that's the conclusion I came to. It's just not a AAA game machine. It's probably like smaller titles. The second tier, I don't know what they're considering standard. I don't know if it's like the cheapest is standard or this is standard, but this $530 model is 256 gigabytes, comes with a carrying case as well, and you also get an exclusive Steam Community Profile bundle. I don't know what it is, but that's what it says. I don't think it actually has details on it, which is very strange. And then the most expensive, the 650, comes with a premium anti-glare etched glass, an exclusive carrying case, exclusive Steam Community Profile bundle, and an exclusive virtual keyboard theme. I still don't know why they couldn't give you a dock with it, but yeah. So between these models, really the only thing that like of substance is like the storage, right? You get faster storage with each tier, and the storage quadruples on the first tier and then doubles on the second tier. Oh, does it quadruple? Yeah, that's math. Yeah, quadruples on the first tier, doubles on the second tier. The price difference between them for the storage you get is like really expensive per gigabyte. So you gain some approximately 200 gigabytes, like 90 or 190, yeah, 190 gigabytes approximately from the first tier, and you end up paying, let's see, math. You end up paying about 130 extra dollars for that.
Did you say you could connect SD cards to it?
Yes, all versions you can put a micro SD card in it, but the problem is micro SD cards are kind of slow.
You can buy actually like extremely fast ones, but they're going to cost you a lot of money. So yeah,
yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty. Let me check my notes. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I think as for what I think about it, I think you should not buy it now. You should see how it goes. One thing to mention is that you will not have the entire Steam library at your disposal actually, because it runs off Linux, and so a lot of games aren't actually supported on Linux.
Yikes!
Valve does own Proton. Proton is a compatibility layer that allows you to run games that are only made for Windows on any Linux platform. So obviously, it makes sense why they're doing that is so that they can have this. Although I think that that is even before Steam ever had a console, but I could be wrong about that. Proton actually works pretty well. So, for example, Rocket League is not officially supported by Psyonix anymore. They used this word, they dropped it, and not too long after, well, I don't know if you can use Proton on it. I'm not sure if that works, but not too long after, there's like also other means. Someone already made a way to play it on Linux. There's something called Lutris, which is essentially a sort of like community-driven thing where you can submit, I guess, like, I don't even know what you call them, like modifications to the game that will run on Linux. And so you can run like a lot of games like that that'll work. Sometimes they're a bit buggy, like some things like just don't work on them. But for a lot of them, they actually do work, and they work pretty well. So yeah, I assume you'd be able to use Lutris on this. I think it's a big L if you can't, but at least you'd be able to use Proton on this. And I think it's interesting that on their like little you can see it actually on the image we have on the podcast. The games that they show on the screen are Control, Doom, and Hades, and I think Ghost Runner as well. I think is the thing on this side. Control and Doom are, well, more so Control is a fairly like intensive game. It can be, at least on the higher settings. So yeah, I think it's interesting that they're showing that off. Doom and Hades, on the other hand, are not. So that makes a lot of sense. Big titles that don't require a lot of power to run, so you won't be like upset that you can't run it, because you most certainly will be able to, probably. And the shipments will start in December of 2021. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for my thing.
Christmas season.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's definitely intentional.
I guarantee you're the
pre-order it now. I say you have to pre-order now though, so.
Exactly. I was gonna say I guarantee there's gonna be a Black Friday like pre-order sale or something like that. Like
probably. So
you can pay for it before it has a terrible launch. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sold on the concept, just because like I just don't get the market it's going after. Because like if I'm gonna be mobile, I'm gonna kind of want to like, if I'm gonna be mobile and not have a Switch and spend that much money, I'm gonna want like something that I can play COD on low settings at least. So maybe you can play COD on low settings.
Oh, you might be able to, because I believe the is it Ryzen 5? Ryzen 5 maybe 3200G can play COD at decent settings, not even low settings. That's as integrated graphics. That being said,
there you go.
And then that cost that CPU, well, at least when it came out, costed $99. not sure what it costs now with like CPU problems and whatnot, and it's probably not even manufactured anymore. But I'm not sure how that compares to this particular the integrated graphics in this because it's like it's tricky because it's a custom one, right? So you can't just look it up and be like, oh, how's this? Let me see the benchmarks on this GPU because there are no benchmarks because it hasn't come out yet because it's the only one because it's custom. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, and you can also use there are some other I forgot some other plus sides to this. One, you get cloud save. So a lot of games support cloud saving, where essentially if you're on Steam, your save files will save to the Steam cloud, and then you can use that from anywhere as long as you log into your Steam account. And also, you gain access to Steam. What? Uh, Steam Link. Uh, it's a thing where you can essentially stream your games from one of your own computers to another one. So you can stream from, say, a beefy gaming PC you have to your Steam deck, which the latency is a problem. If they're both plugged into Ethernet, it's actually might be pretty okay. If you're in the same house, it'll probably actually be pretty decent too. I can see someone being like, yeah, I just want to play like I don't know something dumb, right? I just want to sit on my couch or whatever. I don't want to be in this chair. Yeah, maybe I'm like watching like a show in the background or something like that, and yeah, I'll just stream my computer to play it or something.
Mm. Interesting.
Oh, I forgot to say. Sorry, I keep forgetting things. The track. I never mentioned why I thought the trackpad would be more useful besides the D-pad thing. I think it's because it's useful to have some way of emulating a cursor because a lot of games expect you to have a cursor because it's going to just run PC games. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I assume there's going to be at least one or two indie makers who are going to make a game specifically for this platform or something like that. It'd be cool to see if it succeeds.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it, right?
Yep.
Cool. So,
relatively speaking.
yeah. So thank you so much for stopping by on the Mixed Media Podcast live channels, whether you're on Twitch or YouTube. We appreciate you. If you're listening to the audio only on whatever podcasting platform you're at, one thing that we really want is we want to get people together because we're all on so many different platforms. We're on Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, I don't know, Google Podcasts, Spotify, literally anywhere you can possibly think of. And so we want us all to be together. So in the description of wherever you are, literally wherever you are, there's a link to our Discord. In that Discord, we chat about, the goings-ons of the week, our hot thoughts, our hot takes on random topics here and there, and you can continue the discussion that we're having here live on that Discord server. We'd love to have you there. The first however many people who will get on that Discord server will get a title, a role, that will signify that you were here first, before the crowd. And also, we would just love to hear your thoughts on this podcast. In general, what can we do better for you guys to be happier? And we've got a lot of new people come in recently, especially on YouTube. And I just want to say welcome to Mixed Media. A lot of you people, I think, are music people, so that's really cool. So let Ben know what you like, what you want him to cover, and if you disagree with any of his hot takes on different composers. So yeah, with that, I guess we're good. We'll see you guys next week.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.